2015 is off to a great start. So before we dive into our excellent agenda, I just wanted to mention a few housekeeping items. So as you probably just heard, the webinar session will be recorded, and the recording will be posted to the PhUSE website within a few days after the session. All Q&A will occur at the end of the session. If you have questions, please enter them into the GoToWebinar interface. You can enter them either into the chat facility or to the Q&A facility on the GoToWebinar interface. If your questions are not answered during the session, we'll do our best to follow up with the presenters and get answers and post those answers to the PhUSE website. So with all of that being said, I will now turn the presentation over to Mr. Chris Decker, a man who needs no introduction, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Scott. And again, I'll echo Scott's sentiment. A Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope everyone is getting off to a great start. Scott, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I will jump in then and get started. So again, thank you today. I'm going to just give a short introduction to the session today, talk a little bit about the collaboration, the computational science collaboration, and also give a short introduction or overview of the upcoming Computational Science Symposium, which will be held in March, just 2 months away. For those that have attended a few of these sessions, I'll apologize in advance for some duplication here. You've heard this message before, but just in case we have some new people who attend, I want to make sure I cover these opening remarks. I'll promise at the next one to generate some new and exciting slides. What is PhUSE? I just wanted to give a quick introduction to PhUSE, the Pharmaceutical User Software Exchange. And our mission is really to provide a platform for creating and sharing ideas and implementing tools and standards around data and really exploring new and innovative methods and technologies. The organization began in 2005 in Europe and has since, we have global with over 15 single-day events across the globe, as well as 2 conferences, one in October in Europe and the Computational Science Symposium, which takes place in March of every year. The paradigm shift. In the past, I think the communication between regulators and industry has very much been a one-way street. It's been regulators standing up and telling us what they think they need and sort of dictating from up on high, and industry saying, we'll do this. Well, that's not really how people want it to work. People really want to sit around a table, the FDA, pharmaceutical companies, standards development organizations, all the people that contribute to the delivery of pharmaceutical products, to really sit around a table and try to work on these puzzles, these issues, these challenges that we have, and come up with solutions that work for all people involved, all stakeholders. So that was really how the Computational Science Working Groups and the symposium every year was initiated, with this idea that we would get group of people together and work on these challenges and issues. So the mission of the collaboration is really to provide, I'm not going to read this whole thing, you guys can read it while I'm talking, but the key parts here is to provide a transparent and open, something that industry, FDA, other regulatory industries, academia, standards development organizations could come to and have a single platform, a single environment to get together and work on these issues in a non-competitive environment. So that is the overall mission of bringing people together into this collaboration. And it's very simple. There are a set of working groups that have been defined. These working groups have evolved over the last, we're going on now for our 4th Computational Science Symposium in March. And they've evolved. They started as an initial set, and every year we work to improve them and evolve them in terms of the needs of those people that are interested in this collaboration. And then we have the symposium, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. That's actually the event that we hold every March to bring the working groups together, to bring the FDA and industry and academia and standards development organizations together in one place to kind of catch up on the activities that have been going on. And that's all under the umbrella of the Computational Science Collaboration. We have a steering committee that sits over the working groups, and that steering committee is made up of four 4 individuals from the FDA, 4 individuals from industry, and then a liaison to each of the working groups. So each of the working groups sits on the steering committee and communicates information back and forth in terms of what activities are going on, what needs are had, what new projects, what deliverables are being worked on, and so on. So we basically have these 5 working groups at this point in time. The first is optimizing the use of data standards. That's a working group looking at the implementation of the data standards. So we work closely with, that specific group works closely with the CDISC organization, and where CDISC is developing the standards, and this working group is working on challenges and best practices for implementing those standards. Things that have come out of that group are such as the standard study data reviewers guide, the analysis data reviewers guide, and other best practice documents. The second group is a semantic technology group. This is a group that was born out of the emerging technologies working group a few years ago, and they're working at taking a number of the standards and other new areas and modeling them in semantic languages that'll allow us to have better interoperability with systems. The third group is a non-clinical roadmap and implementation. They're focused on defining the best practices for implementation of non-clinical data. They have a send user group and so on in that working group. There's the standard scripts for reporting analysis, and you'll hear a few presentations today on the work that's being done in that group to sort of standardize white papers around how we do analysis in the industry, and developing a repository of shared code that can be used across the industry. And then we have an emerging technologies group. This is sort of our incubator group. This is where new ideas can come in, incubate, be worked on, and decide if that's an idea that we could carry forward either in that group or in one of the other groups. And they just recently held a number of idea workshops over a couple of meetings in December and January to try to generate new ideas, which it was open to everyone to attend, and some great ideas were generated at those workshops. And in March at the meeting, we'll be talking through those ideas at that time. So what is going on? Well, we have a dashboard on the PhUSE website, deliverables under review and deliverables. So I'm gonna try to jump out real quick and see if this will work. So out on our website, we have our dashboard, which describes all the working groups and the projects that are ongoing. We have a deliverables catalog, which highlights all of the various deliverables that have been generated since the working groups began, and then those that are actually under review. And you'll see these out when we make messages to LinkedIn groups and emails from PhUSE. We'll talk about these things that are under review. Everybody can get involved. This is an open, as I said before, transparent initiative. You go to the PhUSE wiki, to the FDA working groups, and kind of look around and see what working groups are going on and what's going on within those projects inside those working groups. You can email a working group lead or sign up for a mailing list. We have the working group leads out there. We're working on updating them before the meeting, so there's probably a little bit out-of-date information in places, but we're looking to update that. So you can go out there and look at how you can sign up for a mailing list or email a working group lead. We do need some help. It's a volunteer collaboration, so we would love some help specifically on our technical team. So we need some help around wiki support and collaboration tools and some of our distribution lists. So you can contact me at chris.decker@phuse.eu if you're interested in helping out with that effort. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time going over the Computational Science Symposium. So as I mentioned, this is our 4th Computational Science Symposium. It's going to be held just over 2 months from now in Silver Spring. On Sunday, we'll be having a registration, and then we'll have a new session that we're going to introduce this year as a meet and greet with the working groups. So this will provide an informal setting for the working groups to get together, to put a face to a name that they've been working with, and to provide new attendees to the conference an opportunity to sort of ramp up on what's going on so that the groups can hit the ground running on Monday. So this will happen at 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoon as people arrive in in Silver Spring. On Monday, March 16th, we'll open the conference with a welcome and FDA State of the Union. So, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We will then immediately jump into our working group breakout sessions. So this is where the working groups adjourn to the various rooms in the Silver Spring Civic Center, and they begin to catch up on the activities they've been working on and start to bring to the table maybe gaps in issues or other things that they want to continue the work forward in these various groups. So the working group leadership and the project leaders are putting together agendas right now that we'll work forward with in that event. In the evening on Monday, we'll have a poster event. So we'll have a poster session where those that have contributed their ideas in the form of posters will present and have just sort of an informal networking session. And then we will have our Scriptathon again this year. That was a success. We had over 25 people participate in that last year and generate a number of scripts that we put into our Google Code repository. On Tuesday the 17th, we'll again have our working group press sessions throughout the morning. After lunch, we'll have a wrap-up and a presentation of the best posters. And then we'll have an FDA panel. And we're really going to focus this panel specifically on the guidance. As I'm sure most of the folks on this phone are aware, in December the 17th, the FDA released formally the guidance on electronic submission and the soon requirements, 2 years of standards, something we've been waiting for, and now it's here. So we're going to have a focus panel on this discussion, as well as a presentation and discussions throughout this event. So the FDA State of the Union discussion, this is in draft right now. We're still working with the FDA individuals to finalize this agenda, but Steve Wilson will give an introduction to the event and talk about how this collaboration and collaborations in general are very important for them at the FDA. Lillian Rosario, the director of the Computational Science Center, will be talking about how they have used Jumpstart, an internal initiative, to really speed up the review process and the tools and technologies and processes that they're using for that. There'll be a presentation on the impact of the PhUSE deliverables, how they're actually using these deliverables within the FDA. An update, as I mentioned, on the approved guidance for data standards. So Ron Fitzmartin, Senior Advisor for the Data Standards Program, will talk about the guidance and what it means. And then the CSS Steering Committee will give a summary of the working group successes to date and the projects that will be moving forward in the meeting. Just a sample of, as I mentioned, here are the 5 working groups, just a sample of some of the things that they'll be working on. Each working group has many other activities than the ones I'll put up here, but these are just sort of a taste of what's coming. So in the Optimizing Data Standards group, for example, they're working on the development of a data standardization plan template, which is a reference that is in the guidance. And then an open discussion on the recent approved guidance, a roundtable around that topic. Non-clinical roadmap continues to work on best practices for implementing non-clinical standards, and the SEND implementation user group will provide an update and continue to add to their wiki. The semantics technology continues to work on things like representing the protocol model in RDF and working with other organizations like CDISC and Transcelerate to make that happen. Modeling analysis results is another new and innovative idea that's being moved forward, and a number of other projects that they have as well. The Standard Scripts group will continue to have an ongoing creation and review of white papers for standard analyses and updates on the PhUSE code repository. And that's all I'll say about that. I won't steal Hemming's and Mary's content later on in this webinar. And then the Emerging Technologies group they'll continue to focus on lowering the barriers to cloud adoption, and then taking some of the new ideas, as I mentioned before, that were generated in these idea roundtables and having an open session about moving some of those ideas forward. Logistics. Well, it'll be held in Silver Spring, Maryland on March the 15th through the 17th. We only have 300 attendees just due to space constraints, so I really recommend that people register early. We're already filling up, and we will sell out before the event. Early bird registration ends the end of next week, January 16th, as well as the poster abstracts. So if you have some innovative and interesting ideas that your company has been doing and you want to submit a poster, please do so by the end of next week. The hotel reduced rates will end by the January the 30th. You can go to the PhUSE website, phuse.eu, and click on the CSS conference or the CSS registration overview, and you'll have information about that registration. And then a bonus, we've worked closely with CDISC, and they will actually be holding their intra change the end of that week after our event. So you can make it a glorious week in Silver Spring and participate in the CDISC intra change as well. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Scott.
So I am going to hand it over to Timothy Kropp from the FDA, and we're really pleased to have Tim with us here today. So Dr. Kropp is the Associate Director of the Director of Innovation at the Office of Computational Science at CDER. Dr. Kropp and his team provide informatics and computational science solutions to modernize and support scientific regulatory decision-making within CDER. So Dr. Kropp has joined us today to discuss opportunities for additional collaborations with academia and industry that may be able to be executed within the CSS collaboration. So Tim, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Scott. Just to start off the standard FDA piece, that these are my my thoughts and not necessarily those of the agency. Although for your sake and mine, I hope there's a strong correlation between the two. So that this is I'm going to talk to you about some ideas that that we have around collaboration opportunities, some needs that could also be called random things that Tim thinks about during the day, where because of the past year, a lot of the things that have happened, we come across new needs, and I think a lot of these needs are very similar to what industry is experiencing as well. And I think that they're good opportunities for collaboration. So I'm going to just go through a couple of those, and hopefully those can spark something, and those can be discussed at the next CSS or in some other venue. So without further ado, let me give a little bit of context to what I'm going to talk about. So over the past year, we've seen a lot of changes, and it's not just the past year, but study data standards, for on the clinical side, continue to mature, and not only is the model mature, but sort of the use of the model matures. We've had validation rules that are FDA's recently published. We've seen increased use, and we learn a lot from that, right? And I think that sponsors learn a lot from that. So there's lots of different things that come up, both challenges and opportunities. And then on the non-clinical side, that implementation is maturing as well. We've seen use start. We have published validation rules for the non-clinical side as well. And as whenever you start up, you're running into areas where you realize, this is really good, but I could have done better. And as Chris mentioned, the e-study guidance, the final has gone out, and I think that as we ramp up in terms of the standardized study data that is submitted, and we're sort of getting over that bar, we reach the next one, which is making sure that we're using this data in the absolute best way possible. I feel a little bit like we've gotten to this place where there's people are really hungry, and we've finally been able to give them bread, and they're wonderfully happy about that, and then that's great for them. But then they come up to you and say, like, maybe you should put some salt in your bread, and you're like, oh, right, that's a really good idea. And I think that's kind of where we are. We've hit some major milestones, but we continue to need to do better. One of the things that we have internally that we've learned a lot from, that Chris mentioned will be talked about at the CSS meeting, is our Jumpstart program. We learn a lot about submissions, about the types of things that sponsors and applicants are doing, and we also learn about what reviewers need, right? What not only what needs are being met, but how they go about their work, how we could do it better. And what's possibly next once you've sort of talked a couple of accomplishments under your belt, you start to realize what are the other things that people really need to be as efficient and effective as possible. And the other place where we're learning a lot is that we have a data warehouse that we've put into production recently, Janus DTR, and with that, doing tool integration as well as the validation piece. So integrating together a data warehouse, data visualization and analytics, along with the data validation of it coming in, is helping us learn a lot about again, challenges and opportunities. So that's just a little bit of the context for some of the ideas that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is that, and then this isn't a specific idea, but I think that there is a place for really having a roundtable with what's happening with visualizations. As I mentioned, sort of as we get the data and we get the data right and we have the opportunity to do something, we want to know what's working. Like what's truly working, what's really helping people, what are the kinds of analysis and visualization that is helping people make better decisions and better understanding of clinical and non-clinical study data, but also understand what doesn't work, right? And if you didn't get that visual pun, it's hey, I thought this was so cool, right? It's like that's not helping you. That doesn't help you visualize the information. And I think that there can be a tendency, sort of with vendors and with users, to think about something that is visually appealing and mistaking that for being effective, and mistaking that for something that has good usability, right? So we want something that's very effective, and we want that to be very usable. But that's different. Sometimes that's a little different than simply the visual appealing or the sort of the whiz-bang app, right? People are like, oh, well, you can do this in an app. And it's like, well, it's not an app, right? That's not where we're going. We want to create something that users can use and is attractive and allows them to do their work in an efficient manner. But it's got to be effective at the end of the day. So one of the big areas I think that's a major challenge for all of us is in the area of textual information. Patient narratives, other types of textual information. How do we mine that, right? There's a lot of different mechanisms out there, and in terms of prototyping here within the Office of Computational Science, we've toyed around with some different types of text mining, with topic modeling, looking at the results of those things in word clouds and all kinds of other different pieces. And I don't think that we've sort of found that place where it's like this is really useful stuff. And I think that that's a place where I would really like to come together with people from across industry to talk about what are the needs around mining this amazingly rich data. We need to be able to get at it. We need to be able to combine it with the more structured data and get something out of it. And we're just not there. And I think that's really one of our main next challenges. And within those pieces, it's not just again about not what's the best idea, but what's the validity of going about that, right? What are the pros and cons of these different approaches? As I mentioned before, one of the things that we kind of toyed with for a while was using topic modeling and viewing the topics as word clouds. And part of the problem with that is that people were trying to make sense of that cloud, right? They were trying to look at the cloud and trying to put the words together in a sentence and saying, oh, I think I know what this means, which is somewhat valid, but not exactly, because topic modeling is unsupervised, and so it takes a lot of thought and a lot of work into understanding what's really a valid method to get you somewhere, right? And then this isn't talking about something making a decision for you, but you still have a responsibility for making sure that what you are presenting to someone is going to help them down the road in the best way possible. So I think this is an area that's really ripe for a lot of discussions, particularly with the textual information and understanding what's working for people and what's not. The second one is I'm really interested in a standard method for communicating analyses, and I mean this in sort of two different ways. one, and they are related, but a standard way to transmit, here's the analysis that I did, right? So that you aren't having a reviewer talking to a reviewer or their supervisor or something like that about, I'm seeing X. Well, I didn't see that. Or if a reviewer's, communicating to a sponsor or an applicant, I'm seeing X, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not getting that at all, right? And you get together in a meeting and you talk about methods and you try to drill down to where that is. But I think something that would make things much more efficient and effective for that communication is to have something that's machine readable, that supports human readability, that goes through in a very structured way. Here's the data I pulled, here's the data I excluded, here's what I used to create the analyses, and here's the method that went by that analysis. And it's something that's machine readable, so that there could be something constructed around that to recreate those analyses or recreate the visualization that somebody was looking at. But you can also look through that, or some way of extracting that information so that someone can read over it and say, oh, I know why that's different, because our methods are different here, exactly here. So let's have a productive conversation on that here, and you can get there faster. And then the other piece is that recreation of derived variables for study data. This is a verification piece, right? So that the people can really focus on where are the substantive differences in terms of the scientific interpretation, as opposed to spending any time simply just recreating things. And I think we can all agree that on all sides that's not a very good use of time. So this is another area that I think would be interesting to discuss. So I wanted to talk a little bit about machine learning and sort of what are best practices around machine learning. And I know what you're thinking. That's probably what you're thinking right there. But a warehouse gets new data loaded into it, and what are valid methods to raise flags that may direct a user where and when to investigate with a more robust method and approach, right? So it's a big topic and one that is fraught with sort of a lot of difficulty, but we need to try to figure out what are those valid methods, right? Because that sort of people are going to go there eventually, right? So let's figure out how, and by that people are going to go there, I don't mean reviewers, because sort of we hold that, but as an industry, there are going to be people that are doing this, right? And I think one of the things that we need to figure out is what are the valid methods, right? And how do you direct people? What are the robust methods and approaches that somebody would use when flags are raised, right? And so I think these are important discussions to have. I mean, is this even viable? It is something that is brought out as the promise as a lot of what we do and what we're striving for. And I think that we need to start preparing for that and understanding what's viable, what's not, and what are the best practices for those. Another piece is, talking about standardization for different assays for really small pieces, right? That could be knocked off really easily. You look at HERG assays and assays that may augment or replace TQT, and I'm not making sort of scientific positions on what that is. But how can that data be structured, right? Particularly in light of integrating with other non-clinical and clinical studies. I think there are easy ways to do that, and that may not be the same structure that exists for study data. It may be something different. And I think that those are some really easy wins that we can have for ease of transmission, as well as starting to get an overall look of study data. Because one of the things that I see as one of our big next challenges is context. It's something that I talk about all the time. Context, context, context. You can get the information, you can look at it, but if you're not giving someone the proper context, they're only getting limited value out of that, right? So if there's a lot of other studies that came in and I'm only looking at one, I need the context of those other studies to understand what I'm looking at. I need the regulatory context. I need the context of the non-clinical when I'm looking at the clinical, and vice versa. and you need to be able to look back. So as much as we can enrich the context around the primary study data that we've already sort of gotten so far, the more that we make that valuable. And I think there's a lot of opportunities around these different small pieces, assays, or what have you. And the last one is, in order to facilitate a lot of the things that I just talked about, is the need for open anonymized data for prototyping tools and methods. And this doesn't mean just sort of like open real data, but how do we make data sort of anonymized? And if anyone knows what the real word is for anonymizing, I would love to know. But that's something that can be an excellent bank that would help almost all of the collaboration efforts that we have going on. Because one of the things that we always run into is like, well, let's try this out. It's like, well, where's the data that we can all look at? And almost no one has any. So that's something that I think would be worth some real discussions about. How do we make that happen, and how do we create some sort of bank of anonymized data that's representative of what we all see to help to prototype tools and methods? I tried to move that along because I know we don't have a lot of time and we have other presenters. So I'm going to end there and move it back to Scott.
Thanks so much, Jim. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities for collaboration in that presentation. So if some of those topics speak to you on the phone, Chris's presentation provided some methods to get involved. And as Chris mentioned, the Emerging Trends and Technologies Working Group will be meeting at the 2015 CSS to actually discuss some of not only Tim's ideas, but some other ideas that were exposed during some of the roundtable sessions. So I am now going to turn the presentation over to Mary Nielsen.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see your presentation. So let me just give Mary a really quick introduction. Mary is presenting on behalf of the Standard Scripts Working Group. They've been quite busy over the last year doing various white papers and conducting some scriptathons. Mary is a statistician at Eli Lilly. She received her master's from Iowa State University, and her primary interests lie in meta-analyses, safety analyses, analytics for submissions, etc. So she is one of the industry co-leads on the Standard Scripts Working Group, and she's here to present about some of the white papers that they've developed. So the floor is yours, Mary.
Okay. And I'll try to go really fast so we can give Humming some time, because I know people are very interested in what he has to say as well. So, all right, so we're one of the 5 working groups, and I'll talk about the White Papers project, and Humming will talk about the script repository, which actually covers several projects. And just quickly, our goal for our working group is to establish a platform for collaboration, both from a recommended analyses point of view and also a place to store shared code that can be used. I'm going to skip really fast. I'm going to leave Humming some time. Okay, so here's the big picture of some of what we're trying to accomplish. There's been a lot of work for standardization through trial design, data collection, observed data, and analysis data sets, but there hasn't been a whole lot going on in the table figures and listing space, and that's the area we are focusing on, and that's the White Papers project of the working group is really focusing on trying to develop some standard displays. So this would be either tables, figures, listings, and that's what the White Papers are focusing on. And then their script repository group is focusing on creating a repository to develop code for those tables, figures, and listings that are recommended in the white papers. But it also, the repository is a little bit more of a, open repository, so it's not necessarily just for the code that would be associated with the recommendations in the white paper. It could be much broader than that. But what's recommended in the white papers is very much one of the priorities as far as populating the repository. Okay, so let's move to the white papers project specifically. We do have 3 white papers finalized. We are in our, I guess, third or fourth year into doing this, so we do have some final work. We have a white paper on vital signs, ECGs, and labs, the central tendency displays that people might be interested in. There's a PK white paper and a white paper on demographics, disposition, and medications. We have 2 white papers that are out for broad review right now. Those have 2 white papers that are in progress, one on hepatotoxicity and one on QT studies, and we have 2 white papers that have just been added recently that will be in scope for the next year, and that would be analyses and displays associated with questionnaire data, and then another one on events of special interest. So it deals with, okay, if you find a potential signal using the recommended displays from the central tendency and outlier shift, you know, what more might be helpful to investigate events that turn out to be of interest. So just to quickly give you an idea of what some of these displays or these white papers are recommending, the central tendency white paper sticks to the box plot, big box plot. I think this has a lot more information than maybe the standard display where you see means over time with a standard error bar. We think the box plot gives you a lot more insight onto the data. For the categorical, we like the scatter plots. As you can see, we are trying to use more visualization, so we do think the scatter plot's very helpful. We're not quite willing to give up maybe what a lot of companies do, the shift table, low, normal, high in tabular format. We think that still has value, but that would be in addition to the scatter plot. And then we do recommend another table that looks at shift from low to normal to high, or normal or high to low, because that will help prevent some of our medical colleagues having to do the math and try to take these cells and add numbers up and figure it out. So we had interaction, we have experience to know that those are the kind of numbers, you know, that people might want to see. In the adverse event white paper, you'll see another visual display that we like. This gives you both an idea of what's going on with percentage. It gives you both frequency and risk difference or odds ratio, but it gives you both kind of a relative measure in addition to giving you an idea of where you are in the frequency realm. So this is one of our recommended displays in the adverse event white paper. So we do have these white papers. Not only do they show displays, we do try to tackle some of the stickier issues that teams may have to deal with when they're developing. So the p-value and confidence intervals is an example where we don't really give a recommendation to say, you know, a lot of companies do find those helpful, and we do recommend which analytical methods to use when you do choose to create a p-value or a confidence interval. All right, and I think I'll just try to really quick to give humming time, but we do have links to how you can get involved, how you can get involved into this working group, how you can get involved in the project, how, you know, we do have a list, just even if you don't want to get involved with the working group, but you want to be notified when a white paper is out for review, we have another group code for that. So there are a lot of instructions on how to get involved. So I think I'll leave it at that and at least give humming a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So if you want to turn the presentation back over to me, I will turn it over to Henming. So as Mary mentioned, and as Chris showed in his presentation, if there are deliverables that are going out for review, there's a web page on the PhUSE website for which you can find all of those deliverables. So if you're interested in providing input into some of these white papers that Mary had mentioned, please feel free to visit that site and provide some feedback. So Henming is here today. I appreciate that he came back after, unfortunately, he was slighted during the last webinar to present and provide an update on the PhUSE script repository. So Henming is the manager of database administration at Accelerated R&D Service at Accenture. He has over 10 years of pharmaceutical experience, and he is also one of the co-leads on the Standard Scripts Working Group. So Henming, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to give you an update about Standard Scripts repository and Scriptathon. And actually, this fits very well with the information that you have from Mary, because in white paper that we define those targets and the Scriptathon and the repository will serve platform for people to develop scripts for those targets. So I'm going to give you some overview about the Scriptathon and the projects that we planned. So this is a little bit of information that you already see from Mary's presentation. The group was formed about 2 years ago, and this is the current leadership. And the goal for this group was to try to establish a platform for the purpose of collaborate. And we try to focus on the tools that can be developed for analysis, for the clinical trial research, reporting, and all those things that probably you do on a daily basis if you are a programmer. But everybody's doing that, and sometimes they actually repeat the work. And if you have done that in your company and you pass that to the FDA for review, and FDA, those reviewers have to get familiar with what you have done, what the analysis method that you have used. Some of those takes time. But if we have open source tools there that you are familiar with, and FDA reviewers are familiar with, that will be very benefit and save everybody's time. So I think these are the underlying goals for this group. So we have two focus areas. One is the repository platform, and another is the white paper. Currently, we have 6 projects. Initially, we start with 8 projects. 2 of them are already finished, and the first one that we was focused on the legal ownership and the issues in open source repository, and this is already completed. We have developed a user agreement. The document is already on the wiki page, and then another project that we finished it, basically refine some of the process for creating and editing the script, and some of the remaining tasks already folded into the project 3. So currently we have 6 projects are remaining. So all those are on the wiki site. I'm not going to list all that, read all the names here. The update about the repository. And we have chosen the Google Code as the repository, and the license we choose and recommend is MIT. And we have a first set of a script from FDA and already in the repository. And if you have not seen it, you can go to the website. I will give you the information in the end so that you can go there to take a look. And we have collected many scripts from Scriptathon. Those are already in the repository. Right now, we're in the process of trying to get more information, basically metadata information about the script. Another thing that we have created an index page for easy access to this script. So in the repository, the script's already there, but how you would be able to find it, we were going to use the index page, but how much confidence you have on those scripts. And we'll try to focus, define this process for qualification, and we have to choose YML as a metadata format. So from we started this from last workshop in the March meeting last year. So we have been testing out this and have been used that. Seems that's a good format because the YML is not just machine readable format, and it's a human readable format as well. So if you go to the repository, you will be able to see some of those metadata files there for the scripts already existing in the repository. And we have drafted a qualification process. This many from the project 2 that we are focused on this task. So here, just give you a little bit of overview what the process is. And once we have received script, or we have harvested script from Scriptathon, we would put it into repository. So those scripts can be in the contributed stage. And the quality that we are not known, and basically that's the starting point. And then we're going to have some volunteers to really look into the script. So that will be moved the script into developer phase. From that phase, we're going to look at many areas. Then we're going to maybe consult with the original developer and maybe connect with the reviewers to see what are they expected for this area. And we are going to work very closely with white paper subgroup, because they have defined maybe the script is specific for the target defined in the white paper. So there are lots of things we'll try to capture in the development phase and make sure that the script is working, and make sure that can use some of the test data that we plan to put it there to run through. Or maybe for some volunteers to download the script to test it on your own data. So this is the second phase. The third phase is to review. We're going to have people that have not worked with the script to review it, to actually download the script to use it in your environment. Once we have that, we have a finished document orders. So the last phase is going to be qualified. We'll have if that to then move this phase, that means that has gone through our test process. So this is our plan. So we plan probably do some real test and workshop in March meeting this year. So this is just a screenshot of the Google Code, what is look in the project homepage, and there's lots of information there. If you go, we have a user guide, we have the information about recent updates, and the user agreement. And then we have a contributed folder for script that users or FDA contributed. So the first set from FDA is about the demographics. So this is the index page, and the URLs there. So if you want to access, you could access to this index page. Basically, on this page, we'll try to capture the scripts in the repository and the link to the metadata that we have created, and some other key information about it, like keywords and what language, what version that was designed for. And this is a mirror side of the index page. This is in the PhUSE week page. So we're going to have two sites host that index page. So this, I'm going to give you a little bit of update about the Scriptathon. The first Scriptathon was conducted last March, and we have 26 attendees, and 13 scripts was developed. And we have a good time there. You can tell from these pictures. We work very close to in that one room, and actually we got the pizza and some drinks. So those are things that we really test in the Scriptathon. So we want to test how to execute those scripts. They are hosted in the repository. Basically, it's open source. Everybody can access. So how you're going to access to that if you are working in your own environment, right? So actually, we test out. Actually, you can just put the URL. If you are using R, here is an example for using R. You just access through that. And if you have SAS, you want to test the SAS code, here's an example to execute a SAS script. So the data, if we put the test data, we want to say whether we can use it the same way, okay? And if you are your own environment, you can define through that. So basically, you can access the test data in the hosted repository. That repository. So based on the summary, we have conducted 2 Scriptathon after that one. So one's in the FarmerSac, another in the PhUSE annual conference. So from those tests, we find out we can access data, scripts remotely, and the developer can work in collaboratively through those environments. So the lesson that we've learned from those Scriptathon is follow. The scripts are stored in the private cloud. So if you're developing your own, because we are developing those scripts, right? They are working in the private cloud system, and it's very some script environment may be very difficult. Some will have to find a way to get out of those scripts and put it into the repository. And some of them will still try to find out what is the easy way to do that. And another thing is very important to define the name convention, the templates, and how to make comments so that others read the script can understand it. And it is hard if without those kind of conventions or templates. So the plan for this year, we're going to continue to add more contents in the repository, and we're going to focus on the qualification. The draft qualification recommendation are already in the repository. This project is led by Dante, and we plan to have the first kickoff meeting. Actually, this is next week. So if you are really interested, you can contact me or Dante to be join this kickoff meeting. And we plan to do a workshop session in the March meeting. And we'll really welcome everybody who is interested in this to join us. And if you're not a developer, that's okay. But if you just want to contribute your time to do the documentation or get familiar with what we're doing, that would be fine. So those are the information that here you can use to get connected with us. We have a list box, and we have this the group name already created for our group. Or you can sign up to be a contributor or committer in the repository. So those are the URLs that may be very useful to get information about PhUSE, about groups, and about repository. So I think that's to the end of my presentation. I think we have time for questions. So Scott, I'm going to turn this back to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Hanming. As you can see, there's a lot of work going on within the Standard Scripts Working Group, as well as the other working groups within the PhUSE collaboration. So if you have any questions at this time, please feel free to enter them into the chat window on your GoToWebinar interface. We did have one question that came in for Chris. And the question, Chris, was, is it possible to have all of the topics that the working groups will be presenting at the CSS made available to the public in advance of the meeting?
Yeah, Scott, the working groups are actually compiling what they're going to present, and within about a month of the working group, or a month of the meeting, the working groups will be posting their skeleton agenda for the meeting and what they're going to be tackling at that meeting. So they're working on that right now, and it should be posted within a month of the meeting, sometime in, I'd say, mid-February.
Perfect. So Tracy, have we received any other additional questions? So it does not look like we have, so I just want to thank everyone for attending the webinar, and thank you to the presenters for, again, a quality set of presentations. And as a reminder, the early bird registration for the CSS conference ends on the 16th. The discount hotel rate ends on the 30th, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at the meeting in March of this year. So thank you, everyone, and until the next webinar.